Welcome to Dual Boot Diaries, the weekly podcast where two Windows diehards see if they can switch to Linux daily. My name is Adam, the Linux noob.
I'm Will. I'm a fledgling / neophyte Linux user, and each week we're going to go through our experiences of using Linux on the desktop daily, culminating in us deleting one of those partitions, either the Windows one or the Linux one.
So follow along as we share our experiences and help us understand why 2025 is the year of Linux. This week is all about install and setting up. Now, I will back up and say we had episode 0 of Dual Boot Diaries. This is the first official one. In episode 0, which I do recommend you go back and listen to, we talk about why we're doing this podcast and kind of the setup things we were going to have. But essentially, every week, we are going to share our experiences of using Linux daily, go through the kind of problems that we've been running into or successes. And then the second half of the episode, we're going to talk about things we want to work on in the future. And this is where we want plenty of audience participation, where we want people to be able to chime in and say, oh, I heard you're having this problem or you're going to be doing this thing. This is what I recommend. So we will be covering that stuff every week here on the podcast.
I like to think of that second part as the actually section of the podcast, when people say, actually, goodness. You should be doing... I'm inviting all sorts of pain.
It could be in the homework section too, because, I mean, we have notes here talking about our install and setup process. And I do wonder if people are going to be like, well, actually, you should have set it up like this. So
also, I got to say, I don't know about calling myself a Windows diehard at this point. I like the reason we're doing this podcast. I don't know about you. The feelings I have about Windows here in 2025 are mostly bad. Like, I don't like Windows used to be a thing I kind of liked and loved back in the good old days of Windows 7 and Windows 10, maybe. And these days it just feels like a thing we're all saddled with that doesn't really do what I want and is just trying to sell me a bunch of crap.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as negative on it as you are. I wouldn't say I'm positive on it. I wouldn't say I'm like, oh yeah, Windows is the best operating system out there. It's just more like it's what I'm comfortable with. It's what I use for both gaming and work. And when you're comfortable in a spot, like switching up definitely feels weird. I guess a lot of my experience so far with Linux has been just comparing it to what I do on Windows and trying to find analogs, which maybe is not the best way to do that, but you know.
I think for me at best, I'm ambivalent. And yeah, the exciting thing is maybe getting out from under the thumb of, hey man, have you considered signing up for OneDrive? You know, what would you do if you had 2 terabytes of online storage that you could back up your Windows PC with, which has 12 terabytes of drives in it? You know, like anyway, here we are.
Well, luckily we've heard that 2025 is the year of Linux. So we're taking on this challenge. Come along with us. The first part of the podcast in this episode is going to be us talking about what we've been doing the past week, setting up and installing Linux. I'd like to go first. I think we kind of take it in steps where I talk about my experiences and you give me some feedback, and then you talk about your experiences. And I'm probably going to have a lot of questions looking at your notes to be like, okay, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're going to have to explain this to me. So let's start off on the simple end, which is my side. So like I mentioned in episode 0, I did what I do on the Windows side and usually call up a vendor and say, hey, send me a piece of hardware, something that, you know, is a pre-configured solution rather than roll my own because I am such a noob. And I reached out to the fine folks at System 76. They sent me over a Darter Pro. The internals, I can list them out in the description, but essentially it's a Arrow Lake H processor, integrated graphics, so no discrete GPU in there. It's workstation-esque, but also very, very simple kind of setup. So like I wanted to see what it would be like to just roll Linux out of the box with hardware that was purpose built for it.
And it's worth mentioning System 76 specializes in Linux laptops, right? They ship machines
and
with
desktops.
Linux.
They do have desktops too.
Yeah. You can buy a laptop with Linux shipped on it from Ubuntu or Dell or a bunch of other places these days. But for the most part, like these folks specialize in, which is I think why you called them.
And also, they've been very helpful when I've asked them questions. There's a couple things we'll go over here that I was like, oh, crap, I need to I'm going to ask them to see what they recommend, because, you would think that the tight integration between the OS and the hardware is something that might set them apart from just, rolling your own distro on a laptop, which is what you did.
Well, I was going to say that is the other thing we kind of buried the lead. System 76 has made their own distro for their hardware that anybody can download and install. Pop! OS is their creation, right?
Yeah, and it's but it's built off of, and I keep forgetting the different.
It's Debian, right? Isn't it?
I believe it's Debian. Yeah. Which I still don't fully understand the difference between the distros, other than people saying, "Oh, Arch is really hard." I've definitely heard that plenty of times, but yeah.
Well, so we can talk about that a little bit, because I think it's interesting, right? The idea is there are several kind of core foundational distros that people build off of. Debian is one of them, because Ubuntu is a more user-friendly version of Debian, right? And the things that define the distros are things like what window manager they ship, what do they use to distribute updates. Like with Debian, it's a piece of software called apt, which distributes these package files, and you can download them, update your machines with a command called, I think I can't remember what apt stands for. It's something package tool, I think. Red Hat uses uses RPMs to distribute software updates. Arch uses a whole variety of things, but there's a core thing called Pacman that they use. And what people do is they take the distro. The reason people use Debian is they have a really well established structure for updates. So they have they have stable updates that are good for a long time, and get lots of security updates for an extended period of time, kind of analogous to a major version of Windows or Mac OS. And then they have more frequent updates in between that are unstable or dev builds, and you can choose to live on which of those branches you want. And different sub distros will fork off different branches of those core Debian or core Red Hat or core whatever distro you choose.
Which, I mean, and before we started any of this, and we were talking a lot on the Full Nerd podcast about Linux and kind of our journey so far, there was a lot of people giving a lot of recommendations on what to use. Now, yes, I'm using Pop! OS right now on the System 76 laptop, but I do want to try other stuff. There was a lot of people who said, "Hey, try out Mint." That was another one as a noob that I know I want to try out. I do also want to try out. I have a laptop over here that I'm going to set up with what you've been using, which is Cachy, because it supports like really brand new hardware. I know it's a little harder, but I think that's the hard part for me right now, is that as I go through my notes here, a lot of this is me maybe not fully understanding the difference between Pop! OS and just Linux in general. Because right now, like, I'm using it and I'm like, okay, well, in the back of my mind, I'm like, is this a Pop! OS thing or is this a Linux in general thing? And I know, as we've been sitting here and I've showed you stuff, when we're in the studio, you're like, oh, well, you can change the look of that if you want, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't know what the difference is here.
Well, okay, so the distros are, the thing we said, I told you early on, is that Linux is all about choice, right? Mm-hmm. So unlike with Windows, where with Windows 11 or Mac, with Windows 11, you can choose. You can't choose what your windowing metaphor is, right? You can't say, oh, I want to have a dock like Mac OS has along the bottom and no system bar. I want my start menu to work like the Windows 95 one, or like the Windows 3.1 one, or like the BOS one if you're into Haiku. You can choose all of that stuff. You can choose how everything down to like font renders and stuff like that. At the core, Linux is just the kernel. So it's the thing that provides an interface between the hardware of the low-level hardware of the computer and the software that runs on that computer. And then everything else above that, generally speaking, people pick distros because they do the hard work of picking the other software that runs on top of that. But if you want to, you can roll your own distro from scratch. It's an incredible amount of work, and no sane person is going to do that. But like you can choose your window manager and you can choose what tilings, how what the chrome around those windows looks like, what the shape of those windows looks like, what kind of buttons and stuff you use, whether the maximize button makes things bigger or rolls up the window so it's just like a bar, or any number of a bazillion different weird ways to interface with computers. You can choose. You can make your Linux machine work like a Mac does in terms of windowing, or make it work like a Windows machine does, or make it work like an old Sun workstation from the 1990s does. These are all options that are available to you.
Now, I will say, as somebody who, like, I like that idea of choice, and I bet some people are going to cringe when they hear me say this, but I almost feel like I'm in the spot where I'm like, because there's so much choice, I don't know what to choose, or I don't know what I can do. Like, I'm in the unknown part of like, I'm not used to even thinking in those terms of like, I can make this change do something else. So I don't even think about it, which I think is something, once again, naturally I'll probably get into as I have these questions. But especially to start, I'm just using it as is, I'm not going to say intended, by System 76, but the out-of-box experience. And I think that'll probably help some people who are looking to get into that. And then also maybe, as time goes on, I can be like, okay, well then I didn't like how this acted. And so I was able to find a way to change it up. So I do want to start going through this. So the setup process, most Windows laptops come already pre-installed with Windows. I mean, it depends the vendor, how it's kind of set up. But, you get a laptop in and it's the Windows 11 setup screen, all that kind of stuff. So going through this fresh, and because Pop! OS came pre-installed on the laptop, I was curious to see what the install process looked like. The first thing that popped up was a lot of lines of code as it was going through, I'm sure, system checks or, something. And I was just like, my first thought was like, I already broke it. But I mean, it
that's just how Linux boots at them. That's
I was just like, there was a part of me that felt a little naughty. I was like, ooh, look at me, hacker man,
man.
Lines of code.
You know how long it takes to get a DHCP address, right?
I know, right? And then the weird thing for me, and I think maybe you were there when it popped up, was that it booted into Pop! OS, or what seemed to be Pop! OS, and it had a window that popped up talking about installing Pop! OS. And I was like, it was weird. It looks like I'm like already at the OS. I could start opening apps and all this kind of stuff, but there was already a pop-up saying like install Pop! OS. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't know what that means. So I went through it, and really it was more like a quick high-level customizations that you could do.
First boot experience, basically.
Yeah. So it's essentially like, hey, where do you want the dock? I should have wrote down all the other options, but it was generally pretty simple. And I was like, once I got through it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. That makes sense. It's not an actual installation. It was just more kind of like a, help kind of finalize configuration. And then the last part on the just that first setup part was that I needed to put in a strong password. This laptop doesn't have any sort of biometric login, no fingerprint reader, no facial scan, anything like that. And not only that, like, it had a pretty strong requirement for a password to be put in. I couldn't just put 1, 2, 3, 4. Not that I was trying to do that. Well, actually, I did try to do that just to see, but it was like, now you got to put something more, more strength in there. So I guess that's my first question was like, how widespread are biometric logins for Linux? Is that like a normal thing, or do people don't really use those? Do you know?
Well, so I don't have a fingerprint sensor on the laptop that I'm using, but I do have a Windows Hello camera. Mm-hmm. And I was able to download software, and it took a little bit of fiddling to get it to work. We can talk about it in a little bit, but I was able to get the Windows Hello camera to work. Those are, I would call those semi-reliable at the best of times in my experience. The ways it fails are different than the way it fails on Windows. Like, it fails on the Linux side often because of lighting. On the Windows side, it often fails because the driver doesn't wake up fast enough for Windows Hello to be okay with waiting for it.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, it's like the same ratio of fails to successes, but for completely different reasons. So fingerprint sensors, from what I was able to tell, looking at this at the face cam thing are much more widely supported, assuming you have one that has chipset and kernel support for Linux.
Okay. I'd like to hear what people use out there. Like, please put down in the comments for the YouTube video or, maybe over on our Full Nerd Discord, which I'll have linked down in the description. I'm curious to see what other people do. Do they put in a manual password? Do they do any sort of biometric login? I'm curious.
The thing that's interesting to me that I haven't really used desktop Linux in a fairly long time at this point, and so I haven't used I've used 1Password CLI, which is a command line version of 1Password on my servers because I work with those mostly through terminals and shells. But I haven't done like KDE, for example, which is one of the window managers that we'll talk about in a minute, has a wallet built in that by default it kind of stores your passwords in, and you can access it by typing in your system password instead of typing in the individual password in the same way that you use a password manager, kind of. But it doesn't seem like there's system level hooks to let me use, say, my 1Password desktop install on Linux outside of browsers and stuff like that. So in place of that KDE wallet, and I'm sure people are screaming at their radios now because I'm sure there's a way to do that. I just don't know how to set it up.
Yeah. Once again, that's why we want feedback and help on that stuff. So that actually brings me to installing apps. So I did a little bit of configuration, like, okay, where do I want the dock? How big do I want it? Which scrolling direction? All that kind of stuff.
Did you go with natural or traditional?
Oh, I don't remember. I'm the one who like you grab it and then it slides under, like it follows.
You want
to
act like you're pushing a piece of paper on the table?
Exactly. Yeah. That's my default. And I can't remember which one it defaulted to.
That's the Mac style.
And so I did some of that stuff. Once again, what's built into Pop! OS was, I'd call fairly minimal. I mean, it's more than Windows for sure. But I'm not to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, I can just go and change anything in there. I was just mostly messing with the settings in there. And then really the big step for me is, okay, installing all my apps, all the things, that I need to use. And the first thing I usually install on a Windows laptop is 1Password. So 2 things on that. The first one is I usually just go to the manufacturer's website or the software website and be like, oh, okay, let's go over to 1Password and, hit the download link. Is that the way most people do it on Linux? I have a feeling no.
So most of the time, you probably, for commercial software on Linux, you probably want to get something that people package up and put in one of the things that changes from distro to distro is the norms about like where software is stored and where user files for software are stored and stuff like that. So you want to get something that's packaged up and set up for the distro that you run on. And this is where my knowledge is thin, with a big asterisk. So there's things like Flatpaks that are like kind of equivalent to Docker containers, as I understand it. Like a Docker container, which is like virtual machine runs a whole other computer inside a fake computer on your desktop. A Docker container just runs the bits of the OS that you need to run that software inside a kind of virtual container that's not as heavy as, say, a full, like a virtual machine. Flatpaks are kind of like that, but for user space applications. For example, like I run a bunch of Electron apps like Discord and Slack and Notion and things like that inside Flatpak containers for 2 reasons. One is that it isolates a potential security threat from the main system because it's inside this kind of containerized format. Whereas if you install it using your package manager, in your case, I guess Pop! OS has a store that is based on Debian. It's based on apt-get, right?
Yeah, it's called Pop Shop.
Yeah.
Which I did look for 1Password in there, and it wasn't.
Yeah, so often, now the other thing is that often software vendors like Slack, for example, packages Slack for Debian-based distros like Ubuntu and Debian, and also for Red Hat. So you can download a Slack install for Red Hat and just run it, and then I assume it will auto-update from their native sources and all that stuff. I don't actually know because I don't run Red Hat. But for the most part, you're going to want to use the distro sources that are for your flavor of Linux, which is one of the reasons that people say things like Ubuntu and Red Hat or Fedora are easier to run than Arch or Cachy or Haiku or one of the lesser used distros, because a lot of that software is already prepackaged for those kind of ethoses.
Yeah. So that, I mean, and this is a thing that like definitely broke my brain for a little bit. And I definitely had to ask some questions on what I should do, because for me on the Windows side, I mean, yes, there's multiple ways to get it, but I don't get my downloads from the Microsoft Store. Rather than I know a lot of that stuff you can just get from the Microsoft Store, but me personally, I don't do that. I go to the vendor website, hit the download button on Windows 11, and off to the races. But like 1Password, I went to the download site on 1Password's website. Well, first I looked in package or the pop shop, wherever they call it. It wasn't there. Which then I assumed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if I would have went to the command line and typed in, sudo apt get 1Password, that wouldn't have worked as well.
Well, you have to know the package name precisely.
Oh yeah.
So think about it like the command line is going to be like winget or chocolatey. Have you ever used those on Windows? They're command line installers that tap into different kind of backends. So Chocolatey has its own thing. Winget uses the Microsoft Store backend. And I have a PowerShell script that I can run and it'll install like the stuff that I use that's available in the Microsoft Store, like PowerToys and Discord and Slack and Notion and iTunes and
it's pulling it from the Microsoft Store,
and it just pulls it from the Microsoft Store.
Oh, okay.
So
I guess I've never tried that.
So Winget, it's a direct ripoff of a Linux style package manager is what I'm trying to get at, because it's convenient because it lets you manipulate that stuff from a command line, which is great if you're like an IT ops guy and have to roll out 500 new systems a year. You just write a script that installs all of your company's stuff from whatever sources you have, and then it's done. You don't have to think about it. So apt-get and it works the same way. The pop shop and other similar things are kind of polite front ends, human friendly front ends on those command line tools. Because like I said, on Winget, it'll kind of do a search. If you type Winget install Discord, it'll look, and there's 25 Discord apps, and one of them is the real one, and there's a bunch of other nonsense.
Oh, okay. I get it.
So on Linux, you have to know the actual package name.
But back to my question, is the package manager, getting it from the command line would be the same thing as PopShop? The PopShop is just a graphical interface for that?
I think that
are they two different things?
The PopShop is a graphical interface for their main repo, probably. Like the applications that they say, hey, these are okay. Now,
and that would be different from the command line?
Same list.
Oh, okay.
But the trick is, on the command line, you can also add other repos. So, for example, if you want to get a version of Slack that's compiled for Pop! OS and some user has taken the version that was out for Debian and recompiled and repackaged it for Pop! OS, then you can add their custom repository, which is stored on like a GitHub page or someplace on the internet. You can add that and download it. This used to be how you got the NVIDIA drivers in the old days, right? You'd add a custom repository. Often Debian, for example, only puts GPL'd software in their repositories. So if you want to get the closed source NVIDIA drivers on Debian, you have to add another open a closed source repository to your list of repos that you search when you use apt-get. And that's where you get those NVIDIA drivers, right? The closed source blobs.
Once again, choice, right?
Choice.
And you're talking about, get it. Well, because then I was like, okay, well, I couldn't find it in the pop shop. I don't know the exact way to do it necessarily through the command line, so I'll just go to the website. And then even on the website, it had three buttons. One was download.deb. The other button was download.rpm, and then there was a third option saying more ways to install 1Password for Linux. And I was like, oh no, I don't know which one to do. Luckily you told me like the .deb, is probably the one I want to get. So that's the one I installed. But that's because it's because that is the underlying Linux kernel, right? Is Debian based or whatever. Yeah. So okay. And then
the whole OS is starts with Debian, and then they add their own add and remove things to it from there.
Okay. So and then so that was 1Password. Then Slack was an interesting one because Slack actually was in the pop shop. So I was like, okay, cool. Go ahead and download and install. And then I opened it up and it said, hey, this version is no longer supported. Go download the newer one. And I was like, well, that seems like a pain in the butt for me. So I went to the website, again, kind of had same options. I think they list theirs as being technically in beta. But then I noticed also on the pop shop, I kind of went back when I was showing you this stuff, and there was a drop-down menu to pull it from two different places. I wish I would have wrote that down.
It was FlatHub and I can't remember what the other one was.
Yeah, so the one it defaulted to was pulling an older version that was no longer supported. So all I did was uninstall that one and then go back in, switch the version, and install that one, and that was the right one. So that, long story short, I kind of did this with a bunch of different applications, and I was just like, it was overwhelming. To tell you the truth, I feel like I have a better handle on it now that I asked you some questions, but it was definitely like, once again, back to that thing of like, it's great to have a lot of choice, except for when there's almost too many choices and I don't want to mess anything up.
Well, and so sometimes that choice saves you work and saves you hassle, right? Like at no point along this process did somebody try to sell me a copy of Office, right? Which is nice. But at the same time, at no point along this process did anybody offer to sell me a copy of Office, and sometimes you need a copy of Word or PowerPoint or something like that. So to contrast, I'm using Cachy, which is an Arch-based distro. It's, like you said earlier, targeted toward newer hardware. I think it doesn't support CPUs older than Zen 4. Like you have to have a Zen 4 or newer CPU to run the current builds.
They're really throwing people overboard. Huh?
Like they are aggressive about supporting new hardware, which is kind of nice. It's a really good differentiator for them in the Linux world, because the Debian kernel is probably just now getting Arrow Lake at this point, right? When I installed 1Password in Discord and Notion and Slack, I used this tool called AUR, which is the Arch Linux user repository, and it's basically a collection of software that people have repackaged from other sources for the Arch kind of like guidelines and ethos and data structures. It's when I talk to people about it, though, they were like, oh yeah, like some of these user repositories are, like, from a security standpoint, a little suspect. You have to be thoughtful and cognizant of where you're installing this, because they are taking scripts and stuff like that from other sources, and then they're injecting their own stuff in there, and they could be making changes. Now it's all open, and you can see the stuff that they've changed. So if you're doing stuff that's popular, it's probably fine. The TLDR I got from people who aren't Mikey and aren't super paranoid was if you're doing stuff that's fairly common, like Slack and Discord and tools like that, you're probably okay. But be thoughtful before you install something that has like three downloads on it from the AUR, right?
Yeah, so I was going to ask, like, what does be thoughtful mean? Like, are there user reviews? Should you like Google it? Like,
I mean, there are definitely, let's see, are there user reviews? No.
You said how many downloads? Is that usually a pretty good indication of
votes? Download, number of downloads. Oh, there are comments, actually. So there's comments that tell you when there's problems with something and when it works. Like Discord's a good example of this, because, when they update the Discord client, they often disable access for the old versions of the Discord client, which is how they keep everybody using official Discord clients. So often, usually you're good on a version until you reboot your computer, and then the next time you reinitialize Discord, it's like, hey man, you're on an old version, you should update. Which on Windows, it just downloads a new update, dumps it into your user profile directory, because that's where Discord installs itself on Windows, where it doesn't need any kind of special UAC access. On Linux, it doesn't know where to put that stuff, and it doesn't know which version of Linux I have. So I have to go back to the folder where I keep the AUR version, and I have to download a new version by just doing a git pull, and then I make package and recompile the new version for the OS. So it's a little bit more of a process, and I feel like there's probably some tools that automate that stuff on Cachy. I haven't spent a whole lot of time digging into it because I don't, it's a laptop, so I don't actually reboot it all that often. It just goes to sleep and then wakes up. But at some point, I'm going to take some time and figure out how I'll probably just write a bash script that runs git pull and repackages Slack and Discord and the other, like those are the two main offenders on my computer. of the things that just don't work great.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I haven't run into that yet, so I definitely was like, okay, well, when an update does get pulled, where is it getting pulled from? Or is it like something where I need to be like, oh, okay, I need to remember this, and this app I need to update manually.
So I would hope that the software you're downloading directly from the vendor is updating itself, is able to update itself off of the vendor's sources. The stuff that you're downloading from FlatHub, you have to use the FlatHub methodology for updating, which I actually haven't used yet. I don't know how that works. So
okay, well, yeah. So there's a couple other things that I want to get to here, and then you've got some stuff too. So yeah, there were. I had a couple things where like, okay, these are things I use daily on Windows, like Task Manager. I love to have Task Manager open just because it's open all the time, just because it's my first quick indication of if I have some sort of issue. You know, like, oh, wow, my download speed looks really bad. Just tab over to Task Manager real quick and be like, huh, okay, well, that's what it's pulling. Or, man, I just got a real big dip in some performance. Tab over to Task Manager. Was it the GPU? Was it the CPU? Do I have a memory leak? It's not the best tool. It's not like the tool to troubleshoot, but it's something that's open that I can constantly reference to just cross-check, myself, to be like, hey, why is something happening? Where do I look to fix something? So I was like, okay, well, what's the best, thing for that on Linux? And there is something built into Pop! OS called System Monitor. I used it. It was fine. I'm not, super deep. So I asked the people in our Discord, like, hey, can you recommend some other stuff? There was two of them that actually turned out to be really cool. The first one was btop, which essentially I went to the command line. That was the first application I did go in and say sudo apt-get btop.
Install btop?
Yeah. Whatever now I don't remember. And it installed, or, it asked for the password or whatever it installed. And when it ran, like, it's actually a really cool utility for like watching system stuff and can be configured, and it all happens in the terminal. Like it is just a terminal. There's no separate application. It's just a terminal window, which was interesting. And then the other one, which actually I've been using more, is Mission Center. So that one I did have to go out and install FlatHub to get and to install, and that was actually looks almost exactly like the Windows Task Manager. In some ways, even better. Like I was just like, oh, okay, this is exactly what I was looking for. It was really cool.
You showed me this the other day, and I went and installed it on my laptop almost immediately. It's really cool.
Yeah. And then, there was other things like Device Manager. Usually, I'm somebody who's like, especially on a new install, I'll go over to the Device Manager in Windows and just look to see, okay, are all the drivers loaded? Once again, it's not the ultimate tool, but it's like the first stop to look at something, to be like, okay, is everything installed correctly? All that kind of stuff. Is there something I need to address? I'm looking for the little icon. And so I asked the people in Discord, I was like, hey, what's the equivalent of Device Manager? And they were like, not really. They said a command line like INXI with, some other, tags on it to do different things, and they were like, yeah, it'll kind of list out your hardware and stuff, but it's not the same exact thing. But I guess they were just saying that drivers and stuff like that kind of just is handled differently on Windows and Linux. Like,
yeah, it's, the support for everything is just built into the kernel, and it typically kind of just works, which is nice. It turns out.
Yeah. Well, and I would assume, not that I didn't think that System 76 shipped it with, all the stuff pre-done, but I wanted to check once again and just be like, oh, okay, well, and I think that it'll become more relevant to me, like, once I do install something on a piece of hardware that didn't come with it, to be like, oh, okay, well, weird, the webcam isn't working. How do I, other than, if the webcam's not working, how do I then go troubleshoot that kind of stuff? But I'm not there yet. And then the very last one, which was just really dumb fun, just because I think I made a comment of like, oh, wow, look, I'm messing around in the command line. I feel like Neo from the Matrix. Somebody said, well, why don't you type in C Matrix? And then it literally just gives you the code, like the matrix code. And
matrix code.
I was like, okay, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Look,
it's dumb, but it's cool.
The Linux screensaver, the matrix screensaver in like 2000 being only a Linux thing for a long time was, I think, one of the big onboarding ramps for a bunch of people in Linux in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
So that's just built into the kernel. Like
it's just a feature.
It's just a feature. Okay, that was, I was like, it's kind of a cool little thing. I liked it. The last thing for me was then, I mean, obviously the name of this show is Dual Boot Diaries. So I wanted to go then install Windows, which was not pre-configured on there. My first step was which I know a lot of people wouldn't have this. I actually went and asked System76. I said, hey, you have an article on your website describing it, but it was a couple years old. So I just reached out to my contact saying, hey, is this article still up to date? How do you recommend somebody installs a dual boot setup, which I obviously want to do? And so they said, yeah, the article was accurate, a little out of date, but I was able to get through it completely fine. There was 3 different ways to do it. One of them being virtualize, like a VM kind of thing, running Windows and that. I didn't want to do that. The second one was to make a partition on the same drive, which obviously has issues, which maybe I'll get into a little bit later when I do that. But their recommended way, the cleanest way, was to literally yank out the SSD that Linux is installed in and put in a second SSD with Windows installed in it. Luckily, this laptop has 2 M.2 slots, and I have an extra drive laying around, so I did that. I just installed Windows on that fresh drive and essentially switched back and forth through holding down the escape key and going into their front end, or is it UEFI? Is it the same?
It's a UEFI, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then just picking which one I want to boot from. Not the simplest way, but it works fairly simple on my end.
So I think that they probably do 2 SSD slots for very specific reasons, because they are selling Linux laptops. The partitioning thing in Linux is complicated. We can talk about it. One of the things that's neat about Linux in general is that theoretically everything that goes with your user account is actually saved in your /home/your username folder, which means that if you want to try other versions of Linux, you can just copy that home folder, or even better, make the /home folder its own partition and then just mount that as the home folders when you're installing a new version of Linux. And then all of your stuff will just theoretically, again, work. You might have to install the same applications and stuff like that on different distros. But you can do something really goofy, like have a 4 terabyte SSD with 8 different root folders for 8 different distros and one home folder, and then switch between them willy-nilly. And it's going to cause complex, weird problems in some ways, I'm sure, but it'll also mostly just work. Which is wild. That's right?
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't do that. That's not a thing people should do.
I'm not there yet. I will say, when I did install Windows, System76 did have already I think it was a GitHub link
with drivers and
somewhere
stuff.
Somewhere to download the drivers for that specific model of laptop to get the drivers on Windows. I downloaded all that, including Wi-Fi, webcam, all that kind of stuff, and Windows just worked. Like it was easy. I was able to install the applications that are kind of Windows centric, like Adobe, Microsoft Excel, all that kind of stuff that I haven't yet got around to figuring out how to change or change my workflow in a way that works on the Linux side. So right now, I'm very much doing most of my stuff in Linux, but if I do need to do something in Excel that requires me to make charts, things like that, or in Photoshop right now, then that's why I'm switching over to the Windows side. And it is actually just as easy as rebooting, launching into it, and it's been very straightforward. So
it's worth mentioning that System76 ships an open source BIOS, like their BIOS is open. Generally, if you're going to dual boot and you're going to share one drive, the recommendation is that you install Windows first, you configure it to use the whole drive, and then you can resize the drives yourself. My experience, it's generally better to let the Linux install handle the drive partitioning, because those flows work better than the, hey, I'm going to do this myself flows if you don't know what you're doing. And then you install Linux on top of that Windows install, and it'll resize the partitions for you, set up dual booting, all of that stuff just out of the box.
So that's what you did then, right? Moving
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
Your notes. So yeah, did you run into any issues?
So I had a couple of issues. Like the thing that I will say is I first resized the partition using Windows, and the Cachy installer didn't like me saying, "Hey, there's a big blank spot on this drive. Fill it with you." But when I started with a full drive and said, "Yeah, shrink this partition this much," it was fine. So that's kind of weird. I don't know why that would happen, but sometimes there's weird bugs in open source stuff, is what I'll say. So the Cachy installer, I did have to disable secure boot because of a recent update, a knowledge base update, a Windows update, had some sort of weird secure boot incompatibility. I can get around that by adding the keys from the Cachy bootloader into the secure boot section on the BIOS. I just haven't done that yet. When you go through, so the Cachy install, like a lot of Linux installs, boots to a live desktop interface. So basically you boot into a working version of Linux off of the USB thumb drive that you plug into the computer. I really like Ventoy for doing OS installs. It's a kind of bootloader that lives on a USB thumb drive. And it takes a big partition. You copy the ISO files that you want to boot off of into that partition, and you don't have to use like Rufus or anything like that to burn the file to the drive. Ventoy just handles that for you. So, like I have a thumb drive that's my OS install drive that has Cachy and Ubuntu and Holo ISO and Bazite and SteamOS and all the different things I might want to install. And when I boot off of that onto any computer, it just gives me a list. It's like, hey, which one do you want to install? And I choose that. So I used Ventoy to do that. When you're doing once you get into the live CD, Cachy says there's a button on the Cachy welcome to Cachy thing that says, hey, do you want to install? And you say, yeah. And then it walks you through a kind of install process that starts with partitioning and like keyboard layout and location and time zone and stuff like that. And then it gets to some kind of, some of those difficult choices that we talked about before, like which bootloader do you want to use to manage your dual boot, right? Do you want to use Grub, which is the classic old command line based bootloader from the from MBR days of disk partitions, where you can have one active partition. Master boot record, yeah. I did my research, and I ended up going with Refind, which is R and then capital EFI lowercase nd, which is like an EFI program that handles bootloading for you. Basically, you can configure it a lot if you want, or you can just say, hey, look at all the bootable partitions on the drive and give me a list of those. And it even does stuff like gives you a best guess of which, like it does graphical logos for Windows and different versions of Linux and stuff like that. Which is kind of nice.
Well, speaking of graphical, I do want to ask, like, how much of all this install stuff for Cachy specifically did you have to do command line stuff versus just a graphical?
This is all graphical interface on the live CD, on the live boot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is just a program. The difference between this and Windows is that this installer is a program that runs inside Linux, and you could like have Firefox open in the background while it's running. Probably a bad idea, but you could do that. Where Windows just says, "Hey, this is the only thing you're going to do with this computer while you're doing this," right? Okay, so I also had to choose which desktop interface I wanted, and Cachy supports a bazillion of them, including things that are described as experimental and beta. Which I'm going to say this now. I'm going to say this a lot. If you're going to listen to this podcast, you should probably get used to this. When Linux people say beta, they mean something different than Windows game developers, Windows software developers, web developers. Like when they say beta, they mean this is a janky thing that's going to have bugs and is going to crash and be weird. So if you're looking at a foundational piece of technology, like a window manager, what draws windows on your desktop computer, my advice is to pick one of the ones that is not listed as beta or experimental. So I went with KDE Plasma, which is the most basic ass window manager you can probably run on Linux these days.
Oh, okay.
The split is basically that KD Plasma behaves more like Windows and GNOME behaves more like Mac OS, kind of. That's the old way that people used to describe the split between these two. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but people will yell at us in the comments unless I say that. And they're probably going to yell at us in the comments because I did say that now. So,
yeah, I mean, they're yelling already. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. A couple of things I was stoked by. I'm using an Asus ZenBook S, which is their Lunar Lake 13-inch laptop that was released last year. And I chose the Asus keyboard option when I was setting this up, and all of my function keys, everything just works. Like all of the turn the brightness up and down, all the volume up and down, all of that stuff is just out of the box working without me having to do any shenaniganry. So
wait, that was in Cachy? Cachy already knew an Asus keyboard option? Or?
Yeah, so you choose your keyboard layout, and unlike Windows where it's like, hey, here's the 18 keyboard layouts, like here's a ZERTY and here's QWERTY and all that. They actually, because this stuff, I assume because there's not a driver for this that Asus can install or can create and have installed, it has to be built into the kernel. So the Asus keyboard layout just worked, and that's one of those things that in the old days of using Linux on the desktop, if you had a laptop that was not one of the more common Linux laptops, you just were not going to get volume keys on your function keys and brightness keys on your function keys and stuff like that. But
well,
it worked. So that was cool.
Is that? I mean, who puts that in? Did Asus put that into the kernel, or
presumably somebody who has an Asus laptop and wanted people to use their brightness buttons did?
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my guess is that Asus probably uses the same keyboard codes for that stuff on all of their laptops, just so that they don't have to rewrite that software every time. And they're using the same keyboard controller, and it probably just works.
Oh, that's cool.
I installed a bunch of software. Wendell's guide on Linux laptops with Cachy said that AUR was his choice for things like 1Password, Discord, Notion, Slack, and kind of the common, those applications that you use to make your computer run good. I didn't actually install Dropbox, which is usually one of the things I install on Windows machines right up front. The Linux version of Dropbox is packaged for, I think, Red Hat and Ubuntu. I didn't want to fool with it at this point. I just deferred. It's not on the laptop. It's more of a desktop tool for me because I use it to transfer like video files and things like that. On the laptop, using the web interface has been fine right now. I'll get to it eventually. I might actually use one of the command line tools that just makes it makes a folder on your hard drive into a portal into your cloud storage. So then I don't have to have a dedicated client. You can use, I think, is it rclone? I think does that. I can't remember. It's something clone. One of them's local and like Samba and stuff like that, like Windows file shares. The other one is basically lets you make portals for all of your cloud storage. So you can do everything from like S3 buckets and Backblaze buckets to OneDrive and Box and Dropbox and Google Drive and all of that. They just show up as folders on your hard drive.
Huh. And when you mentioned Wendell, that's Wendell from Level 1 Techs. He has a guide that people can go to. We'll put the description or link in the description.
I can't remember if I got this from the guide or I got this from actually talking to Wendell when he was on the Full Nerd a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
But I think we talked about. I think this was from his guide. So he has a guide for running Cachy on a new Strix Halo laptop, an HP Strix Halo laptop. That I kind of used as a cheat sheet for this because newer hardware. There's not a lot of Cachy documentation since it's a relatively young distro as these things go.
Interesting. Okay.
So but that does leave me with a bunch of folders in my home directory that are like, Discord, like a branch of Discord, because the process for installing from AUR is to pull down the current version from GitHub, put it in a folder, and then run a tool called make package with -si, which are two flags. I don't know what they do. Package, I think I means it installs after, I think it's save and install probably. Basically, it makes a package. It packages up the thing that you download from GitHub and then installs it on your system. And I have to do that every time I want to update one of those applications, which is, like I said, a little annoying. I think I'll probably eventually automate that with a bash script, so it just happens when I log in, when I reboot the computer first thing. And then, the last part is that, like, everything just kind of worked on this newish Lunar Lake laptop. The webcam and trackpad were both supported really well. It defaulted to a decent DPI for the OLED screen so that it was readable at the size that it was. That didn't work on the live image install when I was doing the install, by the way. It was only on the desktop once I got into the actual desktop. So there is a difference there. And then I installed Howdy, which is a Linux version of Windows Hello camera support that worked with the Linux Hello camera. And that was a little bit fiddly just because I didn't understand some core things about how that driver was installed. Or how that package was installed, and then once I worked that out, it was pretty good. So, and I can log in with my face. Kind of, you have to. The hardest part of that is that you have to, in the configuration file for Howdy, you have to tell it what you want to be able to use Howdy for. So if you want to be able to use it for, say, logging into the machine when you first log in at the start of the day, you have to add the right processes for it to be able to be pinged and serve as an authenticated endpoint, which was a fair pain in the butt. My guess is that fingerprint sensors will work more reliably and a little bit easier than that.
You mentioned Dropbox. Is there any other applications that you typically use on Windows that you just are like, I can't use it here?
So instead of using my normal Adobe suite for things like Windows, or like image editing and audio editing and video, I went with Audacity for audio, and which we use for the podcast, the other podcast I do. So I'm very familiar with that. I also loaded up the GIMP for image editing, which is always a mixed bag for me. My depth of knowledge with Photoshop and Affinity Photo are both very good, and the GIMP is a little bit weird in a lot of ways. I downloaded Affinity Photo. I have not gone through the process of installing it yet because that's actually my preferred photo editor these days. And I'm judging, I did the research on the Adobe software, and I think I'm probably not going to even bother trying to install the Adobe software because even with the modern emulation layers, it seems profoundly janky on Linux. So I'm going to seek out alternatives instead of delving down that path.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that brings us to homework for next time.
Yeah.
You kind of covered it a little bit. So what kind of things are you hoping to dive deeper into, and even ask some of the people in the community for help with?
Yeah, I think for me, it's stuff. It's the rest of the stuff. I want to get a better feeling about the KDE, how the KDE wallet stuff will interact with 1Password. Yeah, I want to make that process as seamless as it is on Windows, where I can just hit a button and it fills in passwords for me. I need to get a printer working because I need to print stuff at the office, it turns out, and that's a little bit of a problem. And I've had some crashes on Cachy, which mostly are when I'm using Firefox and watching video. And unlike Windows, this is a place that the user friendliness is a real issue. Like there's no blue screen, there's no error message, there's nothing to search, there's so many logs, I kind of don't know where to start, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To figure out what was the last thing that happened that caused this hard lock to happen. And sometimes when that hard lock happens, ButterFS, which is the file system I chose, flags the drive as potentially corrupt, and I have to do some real hoop jumping to get that working again from an emergency shell. Which both of those are bad and should when I asked the Linux channel on I think the TechPod Discord, they were like, "Oh yeah, that shouldn't be happening. Something's weird." So it's entirely possible that updating the system will fix both of these problems, but we'll see.
Well, so and you were saying the crash is like freezing everything in place, or is it just like completely shutting off, or what does it look like?
So I'm not able to use the Control Alt hotkeys to switch to like a different terminal. Linux, you can hit Control Alt F2 or is it Control Alt F2 or Control Alt 2? I never can remember. I usually hit both. But you can switch from the desktop GUI, which is usually on the first terminal, to like just a text window with a text login for the computer.
Oh.
And I can't do that, which is I've never had happen before on servers or anything. So I would describe this as a novel and fairly serious crash. But again, like I said, I installed off the image. I didn't run the update after doing the install, which my recent reading has led me to believe is probably a mistake. I should probably update before I do anything else after that initial install. I assumed that the images would be the latest, greatest, and there's probably later greater from the image that I installed off of.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Look, this is part of the in for a penny, in for a poundness of Linux, right? There's no safety net here. There's nothing. This isn't like Windows quietly backing up your home folder to OneDrive for you so that when your computer dies,
wow,
you have your files there still. That's on us. We have to do that here. So
yeah. Well, luckily I don't use OneDrive, so
yeah,
I don't
you're good
either. So we're already used to,
Yeah, you're living on the edge already.
Flying with it. Yeah. I mean, and so I do have some homework. Once again, I feel like I'm taking baby steps. I don't want to get into too far too fast or break something or configure something. And I'm okay with, at this point, going over to Windows to do Photoshop or deeper Excel work. Now, I know that I can do some stuff in Excel in the browser. Mm-hmm. I've been doing some of that. It's mostly number input for benchmarking that we're doing. That's completely fine. Usually where it breaks down is once then I need to do some advanced functions or chart making in Excel. I need the full desktop app for that. And so, yeah, I guess I'm going to assume the best way to do it is to go over to Windows for that. Do you know if there's I actually don't think there's a standalone Excel application.
I don't think
Linux,
Microsoft makes Excel for Linux, Adam. But I mean,
yeah.
so that's one thing I haven't actually looked at, because the only time I use desktop with Microsoft Office apps are when I'm doing work for you all. So I tried to install LibreOffice, which the default link for that in Cachy was broken and wouldn't install. So maybe that's also an update thing that it'll fix. LibreOffice is the open source Office suite that has a fully fledged Excel and Word and I think PowerPoint version or equivalent. Yeah, so that's also on my to-do list for this week, is to figure out Office tools. I do most of my writing in Notion these days, which was one of the first things I got up and running.
Yeah. So I guess because the Office stuff for me, it's not just me who's using it. Usually it's a shared Excel document with the rest of the team. So I'm sure there's going to be somebody who be like, oh yeah, just use LibreOffice. Well, but then the rest of the people on the team need to have access to that, and they're, everything needs to be in Excel.
Well, I think the theory is that the file systems are compatible. The question is whether you'll be able to generate something that looks like the graphics that we use on videos of benchmark charts from there. And this may be one of those places, like this in Photoshop and Premiere and stuff like that are hey, maybe you should be running Windows in a VM for those handful of things that you need, versus dual booting, which is kind of a hassle.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is gaming. This is not a gaming laptop. They're not marketing it as a gaming laptop. I just want to put that out there. There's no discrete GPU. The Arrow Lake 8 H CPU that's in here doesn't have a beefy GPU. But I'm curious. I'm sure, looking at the specs, and I've actually tested another system that has this chip in it. It can do some indie stuff. That's all I'm looking for right now. Blatro, can I play Blatro, or when I have some off time. But more importantly, than when I do the Cachy thing on the other laptop that I want to do. But there was a little bit of news, and I know you guys covered this on the Tech Pod, so people should, maybe go listen to that a little deeper. Are you worried about this whole secure boot with problem with Battlefield 6?
So no, because it's easy. It's just an extra step. It's just adding the keys for your Linux secure boot, your Linux kernel boot, or your bootloader into the CSM on the motherboard. And those are Cachy makes that really easy. But one of the comments we got after we talked about that on the Tech Pod last week was, there's a guide for how to do this on Cachy right now. You just need to go do that. I was going to say, the Cachy, that Welcome to Cachy app has here's how you install, there's a button that you can do to install Proton and Steam game stuff on that Cachy starting thing that will get you up and playing Steam games in very little time.
Okay, yeah, because that is the thing of for me, I've been using a Steam Deck and Steam OS in various capacities for a while now, And so from what I've understood is that because of all the work that Valve has done with SteamOS, that the rest of the Linux ecosystem is able to take advantage of that with Proton and things like that. I guess I'm curious to see, okay, well, what kind of hoops would I need to jump through to do that on PopOS, or you literally just install Steam and it just runs. I'm curious to kind of see that stuff or where it falls down. Once again, this is not gaming hardware, so I'm not trying to game on this, but I can at least do some things on it just to kind of get into that.
So my laptop isn't gaming hardware either. I was able to play The Farmer was replaced really easily, and it's not even doing anything. Like the fans aren't spinning up. It's not doing anything weird. I just downloaded
that
it from
Lunar
Steam
Lake
and
processor does have pretty good IGP in there. So
no doubt.
Definitely more than what this Arrow Lake H1 has.
For sure. But I mean, I think for your light 2D games, you should be like Balatro should be well within the. Also, I think like there's a lot of games that have Linux executables too. So you're going to find that like Dead Cells will probably work, even though it's a little bit heavier game, just because you don't have to use an emulation layer for that, right? They just provide a Linux executable. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And then on top of that, for gaming stuff, like I'm a controller gamer. I'm not a mouse and keyboard. Oh boy, we're putting it out there. So I'm curious to see like, okay, we've talked on length on the Full Nerd podcast about like how Xbit input has changed a lot of things in the Windows side. Like I have not plugged a controller into Linux. I don't know if what support is going to look like.
Well, you have plugged a controller into Linux because you've used your Steam Deck on a TV.
Oh, true. Oh, so you think Steam input?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steam input is the new. Steam input will handle the translation from X input or whatever other API people use.
As long as I'm using Steam.
As long as you're playing games on Steam, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, wow. I didn't even think of that. Okay.
Yeah, it works the same as it does on your Steam. Like your Steam Deck. Remember, this you do have some Linux expertise, Adam, as a committed Steam Deck user.
But once again, for me, it's hard to know. Okay, what's part of Linux? What's part of SteamOS? What's part of PopOS? Like, where do those things cross over? And where do those things change? So yeah, I think the other kind of stuff for me that I need to figure out is, for this laptop specifically, is this going to be enough for me to drive the work stuff that I need to do? Because just to be honest, like for this Arrow Lake H system, it has been a little lacking in terms of what I've been doing for image editing and things like that. So, and that's not on System 76, but it's one of those things where I actually might need some more grunt, which is why I'm looking into maybe doing Cachy on a separate laptop. So I need to do a little bit more work, and I have a work trip coming up very soon that I need to figure out, okay, which laptop am I going to bring? And I want to be able to continue to do this, this dual boot setup, and see if under the pressure of a trade show, which to be fair, this one coming up is very light in what I need to do. This is a great use case for me to test out.
Yeah.
Using Linux in a heavily work environment that I'm. Yeah. So that's also a big part of my homework, is to figure out like, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I can use a piece of hardware on a work trip.
So your homework is get ready for the trip. Maybe try the HP laptop.
Yes.
Install some stuff.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm figuring out printers, maybe better one password integration, figuring out a desktop Office client, and fixing my crash, which like realistically that crash fix probably number one, because that's a deal breaker for me, it turns out.
Yeah, I guess the last homework note for me would be that I want to find tools that people recommend. Like I said, it was really nice to be able to go in our Discord and be like, hey, I need a task manager equivalent. What do you guys use? And there was great recommendations in there. And so I feel like there's plenty of stuff like that, or like the Matrix thing where people are like, oh, hey, you don't get this on Windows. This is pretty cool. You should check this out.
The real nerd business here.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think, to be fair, I'm not asking for anything like, high level, like, or really deep work kind of stuff. This is more just like, oh, hey, here's something kind of fun to play with if you're interested. a novelty factor kind of thing. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Find your whimsy in Linux, Adam. That's where we're at.
There you go. That's my homework. Find your whimsy in Linux. So that's episode 1. We're done. I will say that, I mean, this ran a little bit longer than I expected, but we had a lot to cover. This whole first setup stuff I feel like is a lot to dig through, and we kind of already went into it, jettisoning some stuff, and you know what, let's talk about that in episode 2. So I think in the future, there'll be a little bit more, reporting on esoteric stuff, maybe even some news stuff. I said this in episode 0, but we do have a couple interviews lined up. We got a lot of stuff coming in the future with this, so I'm excited. And thanks everybody for going on the journey. And hey, you know what, we've got technically 2 podcasts under our belt, so I think now's a good time to go over to one of the RSS subscription feeds that you use, whether it's Apple iTunes or Pocket Casts or Deezer or iHeartRadio, wherever. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think so far. We're always looking for feedback on how to move it going forward. There's a couple places that you can get to us to give us some comments, recommendations. This is over on the Full Nerd Network YouTube channel. This is a podcast of the Full Nerd Network, kind of network of podcasts. I just said that twice.
Double network.
Double network.
Full Nerd Network squared
there
of podcasts.
Go. Yeah. Of podcasts. And so I will be checking the comments on the YouTube channel. And then there's a link for the Full Nerd Discord where we have a brand new Linux channel. And we have some people in there who are new already, even before this podcast is launched, giving some great recommendations, kind of hanging out in there. Like, once again, we're not experts here. We're just here to kind of go with the flow and mess around with this stuff. So.
Share how it's going, right? This is a hard switch. Between us, we have 40 or 45 years of Windows experience and comfort, and while a lot of this stuff is the same, a lot of it's really different, and it's scary, and having people that will help guide you on that path is good for us and for you too. So there you go.
Yeah. And the last note is, hey, if you're doing this journey with us, welcome. Yeah, I would love to hear your experiences. What kind of things you picked? What kind of hardware? Which distribution? All that kind of stuff. I'm curious to hear about it. So leave that in the comments. Thanks, Will, for helping me through
Always
this.
A pleasure,
and being
man.
Patient, because I have had to lean on you plenty. So
I mean, I got the beard for it, if nothing else. Yeah. I got to get the expertise to go with the beard. Is the thing.
Yeah, one of these days we'll become experts of something. Tune in for that. It'll be coming at some point. So thanks everybody, and we will see you in the next episode of Dual Boot Diaries.